Today we have an awesome talk. We have Justin Otero, who's going to be speaking about AI Engineering and Productivity Masterclass. Now, I can tell you one thing, AI, of course, we've been talking about AI, it feels like, for a year straight now. And every month we talk about it, there's something huge and new happening. And I feel like every month I'm getting left in the dust, which is why every month we need to keep up, it feels like, right? So this month is super cool because, probably about 6 months ago, we talked about JetBrains and how to get continued set up into it. If you haven't seen that, that's a decent one to take a look at. But today we have Cursor, which I actually saw. There was an interview between Lex Freeman and the people who made Cursor, and it was an amazing talk because, not only Cursor, but AI agents and things like that are basically taking over development by storm. So if we don't keep up with these things and learn about them, you might get left in the dust, right? We don't want that to happen. So that's why we're super excited to have Justin speak about Cursor and how we can boost our AI productivity as far as using it for programming. So at the end, we're going to give a couple prizes away. We have a JetBrains license and also a SymphonyCast membership and my shoes. No, just kidding. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Without further ado, Justin.
So I actually gave this presentation about a month ago, and it was very different. It was really about adoption, how to get it adopted at a company, and kind of how things have changed in our workflows. And then I really dove into Cursor, but now really within that month, a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed from everyone has seen a demo of Cursor. And now I want to talk about what you can do beyond Cursor. So just a show of hands, who has used Cursor in the room? This is great. Who has used CodeGPT or Copilot? Okay, cool. So basically you guys are pretty familiar. We're going to dive in and just kind of see how far we can go. You can ask questions and you'll see there is different parts of this. So, like I said, ask questions and we'll try to get in deep and also keep moving along. So, as Joshua said, my name is Justin Otero. I'm a software engineering coach at Value Driven Careers, as well as I'm a senior engineering manager at Navan. I help software engineers position themselves for raises, promotions, and new opportunities, and I do that through my software engineer growth program. So if you scan that QR code, you can get connected on LinkedIn or just learn more about my program. But really, my use of AI is going to be at Navan. It's really about enabling financial engineering teams to move fast, really do so with consistency, and we're going to really look at how that happens. So the goal for this talk is to show you how you can increase your productivity through coding with AI. And we're going to look at saving time, reducing your workload, creating consistency, and ultimately just making you feel more empowered and excited to build. And in order to do that, you have to use it effectively. So there are three parts. First is kind of just the setup, really where we are today versus where we were maybe a few months ago. We're going to go into really how to apply this. In part two, it's a great time to really ask questions. And then part three, we're going to get a little ambitious. We're going to look at model context protocol. We'll look at trends as well as what a multi-agent experience can start to look like. So the main use cases that is very much bare minimum for anyone who is using an AI assistant for coding is going to be these 4 areas: code generation and testing. Specifically testing, if you have to write a test manually, something is wrong. Documentation, it's the one thing that we love when it's there and the one thing that we hate to maintain. Pull requests. I don't know about you, but I have been guilty, even recently, rubber stamping a pull request. So how do we review pull requests with really like that consistency and do so very quickly? And then code-based onboarding, really the exploration of code. You have a new hire coming in. How do you get them contributing immediately? Or how do you start to contribute to a code base that you're new to? So, before agentic editors, this is what most people have come to experience when coding with AI. You have autocomplete. This is where you're tabbing through and completing your lines of code, very much like you're texting and it's kind of trying to guess the word, right? That is a common experience. That is your CodeGPT or your Copilot. Next is copy and paste. You're asking and prompting, and then you're copying and pasting it into your file. Now, you also get minimal context in this scenario. You're looking at a single file or your input, or really like highlighting code and saying, tell me about this thing or improve this thing. And then you get limited changes. You're getting changes at a single file, right? This was the world up until basically November 2014, because in December 2024, there you go. In December 2024 is when Cursor's AI agent came out, and that was Composer. Now it's very much the default experience in Cursor, and we're gonna really dive into that. Before I continue, any questions at all about the world before agentic editors? Okay. So here are some terms. We're really not going to dive into the terms, but I want to show you some of the anatomy of Cursor, because I think there are some people who have barely touched the surface, and let's just orient ourselves as we get into the experience. So super dark. This is your basic editor. The real thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is this right section, which is our agent. And so in the agent, we're going to explore context, all that you can add into context. But there are some settings that I want to just call out immediately. So when you are getting Cursor for the first time, we're going to go into the Cursor settings, and the first setting that I want you to pay attention to is privacy mode. We want to make sure that this is enabled. Make sure that Cursor really isn't saving any of your code, using it for reference. So that's just something we want to just make sure that you have on by default. But in here, this is where we're going to really start to fine tune Cursor. We can turn off and on some settings. Really, the settings are, you can read them and go through them on your own, but I want you to pay attention to the codebase indexing. What's unique about Cursor is the agent has access to whatever workspace you have open. So when you have your codebase indexed, it is now going to be able to use it as context. So as IDEs do get, they have cache, you may want to reindex it, especially if you're pulling a lot of files or you're working in a mono repository, something really large. But this is something that you'll, periodically want to reindex and make sure it's all up to date. Models. This is something that is really great because when you pay for Cursor, you have access to all of these models, right? You can put in your, your Anthropic key or OpenAI key, but just paying for Cursor, you actually have access to all of these, and you can really swap which model you want to use depending on your task. So I think that's really great because in Copilot, you don't actually have access to that. Within CodeGPT, they've just now recently released the ability to swap models, but having that in here and having that just paid through Cursor is actually really, really effective. We're going to dive into rules later in the presentation, but we'll be going in here. We're going to look at what it is to have an MCP server. But yeah, that's sort of like the main workspace that we'll be really diving into here.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So when it's doing the indexing, does it take in consideration like git ignore or something like that, or is it like everything?
Everything. Yeah. And actually, when we dive into context, we're going to see how we can bring in more specific context into like that agent experience, right? Because we want to really, like, the more context you give it, the more confused it can get, as well as maybe the more time it'll take to process your request. And we want to be as like specific as possible, but giving it just enough, as much as it needs, really.
So I noticed you had that privacy setting up earlier, and it was looked like it said it applied to Cursor themselves. How do you feel about like what happens behind the scenes with the models? Like that to me seems like maybe not as private.
We're gonna actually see something where I have one of my like personal access tokens in here, right? And I'm actually gonna show you how it is being passed to the model, right? I think no matter what you're doing, right? If you're using CodePilot, CodeGPT, I do think you have to be somewhat concerned. Now, I would like lean more on like the like SOC compliance and some of the things that Cursor is stating what they're actually doing. And so, when it comes to that, like, in the previous presentation, I really talked about like how difficult it was to get this adopted at the company. And so, we went through legal review, security review, and they kind of said it was good. So I don't know if I'm like the best person to like really talk on that.
To add to that, I didn't see you scroll all the way down, but does it have the option for a local model like through LM Studio or Olama?
Yes, it does. And let me just pull that up. I'm like, but there was a question back there also.
Yeah, you mentioned that the fact that I can use. You mentioned that the fact that Cursor is using the whole workspace context is unique. I mean, I use Copilot. It says it uses the whole workspace context as well. Is it different? I honestly don't know.
Yes, and so what I want you to pay attention to when we make changes, because not only does it have access to really your code base, right? But when we dive into the context, you'll see that it has access to other things, such as docs, such as like images that you want to share with it. And when you start to ask and prompt it, it's now making changes across your code base. It's not making changes to just the specific file or where you are coding, right? It'll actually take into account like, oh, there's an interface over here and we need to update that. And once we update that, there's a bunch of imports that we have to update, right? So it can start to be more aware of the broader spectrum of your code base.
So you're saying that the indexing is more custom than the indexing that Copilot would rely on in VS Code?
Yes, yeah, and we'll actually watch it as it searches, which is like really great to see like what it's doing. You don't have any insight to what CodeGPT or Copilot is actually doing. So I think that's like one of the things that this does well. Okay, so.
I'm used to the good old days when like Adobe would let us download software, pay for it once and use it forever. So Cursor as an IDE is an IDE that has recurring payments on it, right? We've got some payment to Cursor. So my question to you is, does it feel like the trivial like open AI fees where I'm doing a ton of stuff and it's pretty inexpensive, or it sounds like Cursor's doing quite well for themselves. So
Yeah.
I suspect they're charging a premium for such a luxury experience.
Super cheap. Super cheap compared to using your own API key with OpenAI. And that's what, like, paying for Cursor, you have access to all the models, and when you max out on one, you can switch to the other, right? And just like with ChatGPT, with OpenAI in general, you have access to a free version. It's a little slower, right? It's not that great, but with Cursor, it's the same thing, right? So once you've hit your max, right? Because you can set a dollar amount of like how much you're willing to pay per month, which I thought was really nice. Internally at Navan, we have about 300 engineers, and everyone has full access to this, and we've capped it at $50 a month per engineer. And honestly, I don't think anyone's complained. No one's complained that like, oh, this is not enough or it's getting slow. So I think just for what they've been able to do and how efficiently you're able to use the models through it, it's actually really great. Okay, so we are gonna have to pick up the pace here, so forgive me if we go a little fast here, but we are going to look at just like making some changes. And the changes that we're gonna make will start to span multiple things here. And we'll also see how context is applied. One thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna remind it to really take into account everything that I have in place already. And what I mean by that is I'm starting a new coding session, and when you're doing that, it's really just important to reinforce things. So remember to use all the rules I have set up. So just kind of setting the ground, and it's like, okay, I see there's some rules here, and it's just reading them back to me. So we have some rules for GitHub, we have some rules for testing. I actually have an empty CSS rule, but it now knows what's going on. This is an example application. We're gonna go over to products, and we're gonna go and try to delete something. But what I don't like is I don't like that that cancel button is like really hard to see. That's on the left side of the confirm. So I am gonna highlight this, and I'm gonna drop this in to my, I don't know if you guys saw that way down here. I dropped it into the chat there, and it's attached as an image, and I'm gonna basically tell it we're in dark mode, and I don't like the contrast on the cancel button within the dialog window. Super tiny, but it's even harder for you to see. But we're just gonna let it go, and you can see up here, it knows what's going on. It's confirming what's happening, and it's going to really start to make these changes. But it's going to make these changes in probably more than one place, depending on like how I structured the code to begin with. Okay, so this was actually like really nice. It knew that we're going to add a new CSS class name on there, and let's go just take a look at what it did. So what's great about Cursor is it uses kind of like a diff. So when you're making many changes, you can come in and actually accept them at the line level, right? This is like really important when you're coding, because you want to just verify all the changes that's happening. Now I have what's called, and now I think it's actually even default, but like they have a YOLO mode where you can just let it do whatever it wants to do, and it's actually really fun. I do suggest trying it out, but for us, reviewing it line by line like this is like really important. But if it made a bunch of changes, I would actually be able to accept them all if I wanted. But we're going to go ahead and accept this. Now, let's go see what it did. And let me just, right now you're looking at like production deployed right now. So let's get this up and running here locally and just confirm, what did it do? Okay, it didn't do what I wanted. So let's go back.
It's taunting you.
Okay, so in dark mode, so let's be more specific. So what you're gonna realize is you wanna be specific to it. And it, like if we read what it actually did was it changed just the, really like from A1 to like FFF, which honestly that's like a super light gray to white. The background color of the cancel button is too light on dark mode. I need a darker background. So as it does this, I want to just, and we'll just check back in just a second.
Hit the X instead of the button, you know, go back to now the X.
Let's see. Oh, hold on.
That's what it said in the text.
Let's see. There you go. Okay, cool. So kind of did what we wanted. Took an extra try, but this is good enough. Now, if we go back to the presentation here, we saw like inline edits. I want to do something that's like more multi-file. So let's try, let's actually just jump to testing. Testing's a little farther, but what you saw was me pasting an image in there. So we looked at context. Some of the other things inside, sorry if I'm jumping around, inside here, very hard to see down here, but you can drop in entire directories. So if you're using CodeGPT or Copilot, you're used to highlighting something or maybe having some, if you see there, some tab autocomplete stuff. That's cool, but when you can drop in an entire file and say, let me just drop in this string utils, and I'm gonna ask it to give me a function that, I don't know, makes text lowercase. There's obviously a built-in method for that, but I'm telling it, hey, this string utils file, I gave it a test file, so let's see what it does. But I'm asking it to give me a function that does that. And even though I gave it the string utils test file, it's looking for string utils because it has more context. It knows that I use JS for documenting utility methods. So it went ahead and made that change. Now, because I have a rule, which we can just go pull up the rules real quick. I want my rules to be really like proactive. So one of the rules that I have is when writing code, go look for tests and update them. If the tests aren't already there, add the tests. And because I know that you want to make sure tests run, because you can write tests and they cannot run, I'm also saying run the tests. So let's see what it did. In here, let's jump to this file. Let's go here. Oh my God, it's so hard to see. let me just go here. So it added a function for that. It documented it because it saw that that's how other things are documented. It then wrote tests for me. The tests that I have, like some of the rules that I had in my testing rules, like make sure you add negative cases. But what I'm noticing, even though it got like most of what I wanted and it just knew when you write code, write tests, it didn't actually run the tests. So let me just make sure it knows to do that. You follow all the rules. I don't want to tell it what it did wrong. I'm telling it, hey, make sure you follow all the rules. And let's see if it could understand what it didn't follow. So it found out that, yep, I didn't run the tests. So now it's running the tests, and now I know everything passed, right? So basically I can start to have it be more of a partner for me. And that's what like the agentic experience is like, when you have someone who's there to assist you, someone who's proactive, someone who is going to ask itself questions, right? Because you're no longer just really saying, hey, do this thing, but it can realize, oh, I forgot to do something, or what else should I do, right? So in this example, we saw really code generation. We saw context in the form of a file. We also saw proactive rules in the sense of it wrote tests for me in the way I want it to be. And then it also started to run the tests, right? So it can start to interact with the CLI. Now, any questions about what we just saw with kind of like the context that I was using, the fact that I was able to go into multiple files, the fact that I was able to run things in the terminal, like any questions on that?
Is there a way around having to remind it all the time?
You know, like when the best engineer needs to be reminded, right? So when we look at the rules, we're going to look at how rules are applied. And just from my experience, I know that when I'm entering a coding session, I want it to do things consistently. So I could actually massage the rules and say, hey, when I ask you something, confirm with me the rules that are going to be applied before you do stuff. For me, that's just really slow. And instead, what I'm doing is I'm checking work, I'm committing often to like really just, okay, what's it doing? And I'm not asking for massive tasks, right? I'm not asking for it to like build this like onboarding flow, right? I'm being more targeted with things. And actually what I want to show you in like the rules in a minute is I actually tell it to tell me, are the changes from AI or are the changes AI assisted, right? That way, when I'm looking at the commits, I actually know what was done by me, what was done by the AI, and what was done by me and the AI, because my commits aren't going to have prefixes that I defined, right? So just depending on how you want to manage it, you can get more specific or less specific. Question?
What's the difference between running an agent? Do you always run in agent mode?
Always. So agent mode is the default.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so you can still interact with it the same way you do Copilot or CodeGPT. You're just limiting yourself though.
When wouldn't you run in agent mode? If not, like,
I think when you get frustrated, to be honest, like, yeah, like I think there isn't. So actually, you know what? I think that's a really good thing. Let's talk about this. So, who uses like a JetBrains product? Yes. Okay. So I use IntelliJ sometimes just to search Searching in a VS Code based editor is horrible. And so for our Java engineers, they will have IntelliJ open, and they're doing things to really make sure everything compiles, and then they're actually generating code in Cursor. Our Xcode, so Swift engineers, getting them out of Swift for build purposes, those things, it's very hard. But they'll use Cursor for code generation, right? So VS Code, in my opinion, it kind of sucks. And unless you have all your key bindings set up and I don't know, if you just use free editors, yes, you're probably used to it. But when you actually have a premium editor like IntelliJ or just WebStorm or whatever it is you like, you can just tell the difference. So if you're going to be in Cursor, you should be using it for what it was designed for, which is agent mode. I think there's a question up here. No? Okay. All right. So, okay.
So one of the things I've noticed going back to when the agents will remember or forget the rules, I also find sometimes they don't like to be straightforward with telling you what their context window is and sort of what they forgot. So when you're selecting the models, are some of them that are better that sort of staying focused versus wandering off and looking at daisies?
Yes. So let's go take a look here. Hold on. Okay. So Cursor, I kid you not, if you look at their changelog, every 3 days they're pushing updates. And when they do, it's minute. So I really like to read the changelog, and I updated last night. Right now it's on, if you look down here, I'm trying to select what model I want to use. Usually I'm using Claude 3.7, but I just now noticed, because as soon as you ask that question, what is it actually using right now? And it's using auto. So it's determining based on what I'm asking what it should use. I actually don't like that, so let's go ahead.
Well, computers that make their own settings.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the unpredictability, right, is what honestly makes it great. The same thing with an engineer, right? Engineers should have the ability to think and implement things, and an engineer who says, you know what, I like verbose code. Why? Because it's going to get compiled down anyway. That makes sense to me. I want something that's probably easier to just add some log statements, because at the end of the day, I'm consuming the code and trying to read it. So it should have the liberty to do its own thing, just the same way an engineer would. Okay. Let's see what's next. So really that code base exploration. This is really fun, and especially if you are a client-side engineer. And the reason I say that is because we're going to use an image to help us find and update stuff. So in this example, we are on, let's see, okay, we're on the orders page. And one of the common things that I ask myself as a user is, what is this search actually going to search against, right? Am I searching against users? Am I searching against total or maybe updated? I don't really know. And I had a customer request, and they're like, this isn't great. We need more information. So I'm new to the code base, and I'm just gonna copy this. Now let's give it a little extra assistance, and let's just draw a big arrow here. This thing. So we're going to go back to our editor, and we are going to, down here in the tiny corner that no one can see, we're going to just paste that image here.
Do all the models support that?
That's a good question. Yeah, a lot of them do. I haven't really gone outside of OpenAI, some of the Claude models. You know, a few others, like, again, I'm more on like back end, front end, so haven't had the need to like choose very, very specific models for different things. So what I do know is like Cloud 3.7, 3.5, GPT, Mini, like all of those are going to work great with it. But right now, like I said, we just pasted that in there, and we're going to ask, what does the search on the search input on orders page search against? Can you tell me about? Yeah, just tell me about it. Whatever. Yeah. So like, I'm just coming in here. I don't really know what it's searching against, and let's just get some information. So it's searching the code base. It's reading a specific file. It's now looking at the order type to understand like the model of each one of those rows. And based on what it's found, let's see here. Okay. So here it tells me it's specifically searching against the order ID and customer name. So that's really great. But let's just take it a step farther. Can you update the placeholder so we know what it's searching against? It's so tiny. I have to look when I type sometimes. But yeah, now we're gonna update that because we're already here, so it knows exactly where it's at. It's making the update. Okay. Good.
It didn't write a test, so it didn't run the test.
It didn't. Let's test it. Why didn't you test this change? So I think this is actually a good segue. Let's go into rules, because let's go try to see what the rules are doing and how can we make the rules a little bit better. So there are two types of rules. You have user rules and project rules. The rules that we have right now are some testing rules, but they're good rules for documentation, as well as if you go into the cursor.directory, so like it's a .com .directory, you'll see rules that are specific to Python or PHP, JavaScript, whatever it is that you're interested in. There's probably rules already predefined for that you can just consume. But yeah, as it's doing its thing in like writing tests, let's go look at some of the rules so we can really break them down. So user rules are your global rules. This is rules specific to you and will apply to any really any coding experience within this IDE. If you open up a TypeScript project, it's going to use that. If you open up a Python project, it's going to still use those rules, and they're always applied. Now, project rules, this is where things get really cool, because now a specific repo can have rules that are specific to that repo, specific to that language. You can share rules like anything else, right? So if you had, it's like having, I don't know, like your ESLint inside of your repo, right? And this is great because now your team can start to collaborate on rules, right? You can actually say, you know what, we use this principle all the time, or this methodology, and you can actually embed that into your rules, and these can get fine-tuned over time. You want to be careful with rules because this is one of those things where everyone has an opinion, and so you can always add more over time, and you can use rules in partnership with other things, right? So if in this code base, we're using React and specifically Next.js. Well, we can say, hey, we use these libraries within here. Use stuff from this library before trying to build something custom. So that's why it's really good to have project rules. Go ahead, you had a question?
Yeah, one other thing that I've noticed a lot. So I've, over the last 2 years, probably been chatting with the ChatGPT model 10 to 40 hours a week. And so one of the things I've noticed, if you want it to follow the rules, reinforcing it, repetition helps, just like with humans. The other thing is if it understands what you're trying to accomplish. So literally just at the beginning I say, I want this rule because I'm trying to avoid blah, blah, blah. You can also invite it into the discussion and it can give you some feedback. And like the weirdest thing for me in the world is, it's like, how can I talk to you? And it will give you ideas and feedback on it. So like, I would say, approach it with extreme curiosity and you will get a lot more out of it.
Absolutely. I think that's like great advice. And the rules I have in this like starter repo are super basic, right? I think it's
And
actually
it still fucks them up.
Yeah, so like let's look really quick at the cursor directory just so you can get an idea, because these things do great in a role play scenario. So some of the rules that you'll see is like, you're an expert in TypeScript, or let's pull up Rust. You're an expert in Cosmos blockchain, right? So the rules can be super robust, and this should be iterated on over time. You should be reinforcing it. You can also ask it, hey, how can I make these rules more explicit or declarative, right? So you can actually really like fine tune that. But some more things in here, and I know there's a question.
Yeah, no, I just I haven't used any rule files before. Those look like they're human readable. So is there not a specific syntax that rules are described in? It's just appended or to the prompt or prepended to the session?
Yeah. So I think how they're getting applied. So when Cursor first came out, they were just like always applied. But as we know, when you add too much context, it becomes confused, right? And so this is an MDC file, and I actually want to show you what it looks like on GitHub. So /AI.
I should say natural language, not human readable, but
yeah. So I think even when you are prompting, right, like you can organize your prompt with like examples, right? It's the same way where you'd organize your rule such as that. Like you want to give it an example, you want to give it, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, or you are acting as this. And when you look at the rules, they hide it from you in the UI, but on this, you can see there is a description there. You can have globs, so you can like file match on, anything that is a, a JSON file, etc. And then there's this always apply. So what that looks like in the UI is this setting. So always apply means it's always attached to your request to the LLM. Auto attached means based on the glob pattern, right? So whatever pattern matching you have for your files, it'll attach it as necessary. Agent requested, this is a description, right? So, hey, when you are working with if-else statements, always have an explicit like early return, right? And so now it'll know like, hey, if I'm working with an if-else statement, right? But depending on how you want these things to be attached, you'll really want to just fine tune that for your experience and your team's experience. And then manual is you can specifically ask for it, or down in that context window down here, which is like super hard to see, there's a section for cursor rules. So I think what you're really trying to do is give it enough information where you get fairly predictable results, but you don't want to overwhelm it. And a lot of the rules, even a lot of the context, like it already has in memory a lot of the most popular libraries documentation. All right, so if I wanted to go look for docs, I'm adding a doc. Let me just, if I went to docs, no, we're still adding a doc. Where is it? Okay, we're just look up AWS. There you go. So you can look up official docs for like the AWS CLI, right? So it already has that stuff in memory. And what I've learned is you can only get so far with rules, okay? And so how do we go beyond having just everything described in rules, having to constantly drop a lot of context in there? And that's where model context protocol really starts to shine. And if we go in here, so, oh yeah, we did some unit testing. Yeah, we did some unit testing. We have some code right there. We're gonna get to model context protocol and like how some of this stuff, why you want something like that, because you begin to overwhelm the model. But the last thing I want to like really show like a demo of is pull requests. So we made a bunch of changes. I don't even remember the changes, but I have a rule in here for GitHub to interact through MCP. You do have Git context already built in. So you have some context, but it's only the stuff that you have locally, as well as, you know, it doesn't know anything else about your code base, like if you have issues, those types of things. So because I have MCP, which we'll look at in a second, but I want you to see how powerful it is, like immediately. I'm gonna say create a new branch, commit changes, and create a PR. So it already has access to basically run commands, but creating a PR is something that you need a tool to do. And Model Context Protocol is actually going to communicate with an MCP server, which is the GitHub MCP server, and it has tools available to it. And one of those tools are basically like functions, and one of them is going to be creating a PR for me. So it's basically trying to figure out what are the changes so it can come up with some reasonable git commit and PR description. So where is it at? Yep, so it hopped over onto a new branch. It named the branch, which is like AI improve search placeholder. Now it's using the Git MCP, and it created a pull request for me. So let's go and kind of check out what it did. So it, as you saw, it knew that all the changes were AI. I have a rule in there for the prefix, so I know that the AI did this. It listed off the changes, kind of why testing. Now, if I had a pull request template in here, and I said, hey, make sure you follow the rules, it would have followed the PR template. It would have given steps to test, or how to run it, like whatever you would put in your PR template, right? Again, because we want engineers to be productive, and when they review the code, we want to make it easy for them. It would have followed the PR template. And so it made all of these code changes. It actually created the pull request for me, did the commits, did the description, and that's just like a little snippet of what really interacting with MCP is like. We're going to dive into what MCP is and how it actually is set up. But yeah, I'll pause here. Your question?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier something about with GitHub using a personal access token. Was it used during that process
Yes.
there? Okay.
Yes. So it is. So
Great idea.
what I recommend, and we're going to look at it. Like I have a fine-grained token, which thankfully GitHub has created this. So this token has access to this specific repo with certain right permissions, so I can start to like just close in on what it can and cannot do. But yeah, let's start to, I guess, like look at that. But any more questions on just really just what just happened? Because I think a lot of stuff happened there. Time check. Okay, good.
So what you created there was the diff, right? So for the, I mean, what's the benefit of using AI to create the PR versus, I mean, everything that you did already at the GitHub or whatever Git thing is there, right?
Yes. Okay. So think, and like this is, we're going to start to build on top of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, it wrote code for me. Like one, it found where there was a problem. It made the changes for me. It committed the changes. It pushed them upstream. It made a pull request, filled out a pull request description for me. And now this is up there. Okay. If I had more well-defined rules, this would be as good as any engineer on our team, right? And me coming in to review this, it would be very simple. But I think it's really about how the entire workflow starts to change, right? We're able to find code quicker. We're able to make those updates really on our own, right? It went through this whole thing. Like when you ask an engineer, is this a quick thing? And they're like, yeah, it is, but I gotta like make a branch. I gotta make the change. I gotta push it up. I gotta write the PR description, right? Like I have to have like conventional commits, like all of this stuff that for a very simple change, like it becomes like this whole rigmarole, right? And so the workflow is now quicker, and we're about to like also take it up a notch. So yeah, I think really the idea is how do you just increase productivity incrementally on all of the different touch points?
So yeah, speaking of increasing productivity, for example, right now my AD is set up that if it doesn't fit the check styles, it asks me to fix it before I commit. Same thing with some other lints that I run, including the formatting and etc. So can you train the model to do those things for you before it creates a PR, or
Yeah.
because I wanna all the check style, formatting to be, for example, fixed before it commits or creates the PR.
Okay, so if you have a style guide, that should be already built into your repository. If you have linting, that should be a pre-commit hook that happens. Like, so the pre-commit hook runs and you're applying all your formatting, right? We want code to really look like it was developed by the same person. What we've learned is the more experienced engineers are highly opinionated, and stylistic things become problematic. And what I want is, like I said, I want it all to look like it's from the same engineer. But when you have an old code base, it is much harder for AI to produce code exactly the same. Starting fresh, it's a lot easier. And I do think you have to let go a little bit, because if you don't already have super clear standards in place in your code base, it's already a problem. You're already arguing about really minute, dumb things in a pull request, right? Like that's, again, unproductive. And so you already need to standardize that stuff way up front. And if you don't have that, a bunch of engineers using AI, it's gonna explode, right? Like, the problems you're gonna have are just gonna get amplified. So yeah, like I would just suggest that you standardize stuff immediately and you use the rules to enforce those standards. You don't put all of your linting rules in a rule. Instead, you say, use the linter, right? And then you make that a part of like the workflow. So that's how I would like really enforce that strictness and consistency.
Yeah, no, we don't have problem forcing it right now. But what I'm trying to understand is, if AI creates a PR, can I train it so it follows exactly the same rule as our engineers follow now?
Yeah.
Or it is going to be just pretty much reinforced with other outside methods? Like, for example, rule fail the build.
The same way where your engineers are like, what you don't want is, you don't want it to have to go through the full pipeline to get halfway through and then like there's a problem, right? How do you bring that into the local developer experience, right? Like, are they able to run like all of those checks before it goes upstream? Because by the time it goes upstream, now it's a waiting game for it to go through the pipeline, right? Can you actually run whatever like integration tests, right? I would just say you want to bring that stuff up forward. And we're gonna actually talk about something, if we have time, like Devin AI, where it's, like I said, it's the next level of this type of stuff. But yeah, like you just need to make sure that the developer experience locally can be replicated to what that pipeline looks like. Like, we had a lot of problems with engineers complaining like things fail in the pipeline, but they don't fail locally, right? Like, that's just a problem. And that problem, AI is going to have the same thing. And so, like I said, you want to bring that experience locally as best as you can.
What about like a more complex Git issue? Let's say if you want to do like cherry pick and then just apply a simple feature to another branch, something like that. Can you do it too? And can find that feature?
Okay. So if you're doing that, things have already gone wrong. just to be clear. Well, one, being able to just communicate what you want to do with natural language and it interact with Git is super powerful, right? Because a lot of times, one, like I don't like using a GUI for Git, but like a lot of people use things like Git Kraken and stuff, right? And that's great, it helps them visualize what's happening. But I do think people go a little too far, and the scenario you're describing, I would actually say is better done through like rolling things back and really like wherever you're deploying things, right? And I would like to do it in a different area. I don't want people to be really doing that manually. And I don't want people to trust an AI to do that. I would much rather, a canary goes off and like we just roll things back, right? I don't want to have to do these complex, like really like, I don't want to do somersaults with Git trying to get it right. And I don't want my Git history to be like super confusing. I rather just have more safeguards in place so we can just do rollbacks really quick, or like an instant deploy to a previous version. So that's just kind of my opinion. So I would just try to stay away from that.
So I have one quick comment about shifting left. Use AI to help you write your linter rules. Use AI to help you write your Git pre-commit hooks. Use AI to help guide you how to shift left. That's how you should be using AI in the scenario that he's outlined. It's not put it in the pipeline. It's use it to help you configure your local dev environments so that as much happens locally as possible. Just comment.
Yeah, no, like it's an amplifier, right? And that's why like we see less software engineer 2 roles, or like the new grads, like they're coming in, but if you understand what you're doing, right, you are guiding AI and it should be amplifying you, right? It's not solely replacing you. It's not going to just do everything. You have to have the experience and like that wisdom to know what you want it to do. And so I think that's like something that we should feel more empowered, if anything, and not just like, it's just going to do it all for me. Yeah.
I just had like a curiosity question. I know you mentioned that you had it set up to check for AI changes. Is that just in the file doc, or I guess I was just wondering about that.
Yeah. So again, these rules, like the rules that we have at the company, like super robust. Here, what you're going to see, I'm just saying something very simple, which is if the changes are solely created by you, prefix the commits with AI. If they're UNI, AI assisted. And then when I write my own commits, they're however I like. Again, we have a lot more guards in place at the company. We have conventional commits, so it has to follow a specific format. Our branches need to be named a specific way. We have lots of checks to just ensure all of that stuff happens. But this, I just want you to see how, like I said, like it's not a crazy rule, right? But those 2 lines are now making it so much easier for me to see. And when working with AI, I want to ask for small changes. And I want those changes to be committed often because I want to see like really like the history of what's happening and how things are evolving, because it can go wild. Like it really can. And that's where people complain, because they're like, I don't know what it did, and it just did a whole bunch of stuff. And you know, you're not experienced in whatever it is. So like, yeah, I think you have to be really explicit with what you want it to do.
Thank you.
I guess I have one big question and then one sort of small question.
Yeah.
First small question is, I'm still not fully on board, like, let's replace linters, very robust, like, deterministic systems with AI.
No, yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah,
Because
absolutely not.
I do sort of feel like, especially with products like Cursor, this is less of a question, more of a statement, very much like products like Cursor, they're sort of, I mean, you can see it right there in how the rules are. That's natural language. You know what they're doing. They're feeding it into the model. Just like everything else, as far as I can tell that uses these models, they're not deterministic systems built that do the work before the model. All the work is done by the model. So I guess like we have like 20 years of pretty good engineering infrastructure.
Yes.
And then now we're getting the AI, and it's killing the edge cases. Really awesome. Like it's getting all the stuff you'd normally have to write a huge big tool to do.
Yeah.
But like where do you think, when it does get to the point where we're like, okay, we can throw the linters away. We got the model. The model is good enough.
No. You still want to be opinionated, and you do that through your linting, through your pipeline, like all the things you're enforcing. This is the mundane stuff, right? Like honestly, like writing code is pretty basic when like you're fixing bugs, for example, right? Like now we want to like make sure that the bugs are fixed and all that type of stuff, but engineers should be thinking at a higher level, right? They should be thinking about the longevity of the system and have a much broader scope, and like the details of some of these changes. Again, it's just wasted time for like a staff engineer, right? Like a staff engineer shouldn't be doing this, right? And then at the point where you're going to pay someone also like a lot of money to make basic changes, like why? Now, do I think vibe coding, right? Like, do I think we vibe code? Absolutely not. We do not do that, right? We are very, very prescriptive on what we do and very prescriptive on how it's done and what that entire review cycle looks like. And so yeah, I don't think that like that is all at all what we want is the AI to be like have full range, but I'll show you what I want it to do, right? We just made a pull request, and let's take it a step further. I can actually show you like, hey, like review this code for me. Trust me, I would just ask it to tell me the open pull requests there, right? Give me the most recent one. And my friend or coworker was like, hey, I need you to review my code. I can go ask it to go query, get the pull request, actually read the pull request, understand it, and then make suggestions. It could actually write the code and check it out for me and do it, and then push it upstream, but it's not my responsibility. So I can have it go and leave comments on what I want it to do. And it would look very much like the experience, right? But just imagine you have monitoring in place, and I have like a Sentry instance running, right? So imagine you have Datadog, New Relic, whatever it is that you're using, and I'm just gonna throw an error. Let's see in here. Cool. Error was thrown. Let's hop into Sentry. Wow, that's bright now. Cool. We now have the error. Yes, we have source maps, like all the good stuff. But we see like down here, the error occurred. Now, this is where I want you to see like the workflow starting to like pick up. We're gonna just make this a GitHub issue. Hold on. I actually already made this a GitHub issue, so let me do something a little, I'm gonna try something else. Let's see what, it should have picked up as like a rage click. No, okay, whatever. Okay, so we see this issue, it was closed. We're just gonna reopen it, just so it's there. Now we go back into here, and again, I'm gonna say what open issues are in this repo. Yeah, and then, yeah, we'll just see what open issues there, because I wanna like speed up, but it's gonna tell me, I'm gonna tell it, fix it, commit it, push it, and then someone can review it, right? And so what I want to see is I want to see a scenario where issues are hitting the Slack channel or alerts are going off, and for these little things that honestly like annoy our customers, right? That are super small things that are just like big value adds for them. I want this stuff to start to be automatically fixed and reviewed, or like ready for review, right? That way when the team comes in, they're just seeing like, wow, there's all these things that went wrong. Like these are often like very simple type errors, right? Things that you can actually fix with better, stricter contracts, right? And I want that to really happen here. So issue 14 in the GitHub API, pull requests and issues are actually of the same type. That's why it gave me pull requests and issues, but we're gonna say fix issue 14, comma, then tell me what you did before you commit. So yeah, so like this could be a very standard workflow for any one of your engineers, and it's still not fully giving up the reins. This is very much, these are problems, what's going on. I'm still active in, we'll call it the relationship right now. I'm still prompting it, I'm still telling it to do it. And when you're in a production environment, like yes, you're gonna pay attention more, or you're gonna be a little bit more opinionated on what it's doing. This is very, very basic code. And so I'm not too concerned. I'm not asking it to give me integration tests or end-to-end tests. But all of that stuff is possible when you start to fine tune these things, when you start to really invest more in this stuff. Okay, so what is it doing? See, so it knows that it was a test error, and so now instead of just throwing the error, because it doesn't really know what I want it to do, like the error that we saw was me literally just throwing an error on this click event. It's trying to be more intelligent and say, are you sure you want to do this? Because based on what I'm reading, I'm thinking you still actually kind of want this in there. So yeah, it's trying to do its stuff. Now it's doing, what is it doing? Yes. So this is a great example of like, it's agentic, right? It's doing, it really can do a lot of stuff, and now I need to go figure out what did it do. Now I'll enhance your code further by using the environment variables to show the test error button in development mode. That is awesome, right? Like that, like I wouldn't even have thought of that. I would have just like ripped it out, but in development mode, like this is something that we would actually want. And that's like what's so powerful, right? You can, it's now assisting you, and it's making me think beyond just my single task, right? So that's a really great output. So model context protocol. How are we doing on time? All right, well, you might as well keep going then. So it is a standard for communicating with external services. One thing that I think is like interesting is it's reflection based. So it's introspective. You can actually ask it what it can do, what it has access to, which it's kind of like GraphQL where you like show me the schema, like what is the model, but it can actually tell you what actions it can do. And this is really good because you can have a very simple layer in your application that just communicates with this MCP server. In the example that we saw, Cursor is our client, and it's opening up a connection to an MCP server that I've configured. I'll show you a little bit what that configuration looks like, and then it is also, like I said, it's as I'm prompting it, it is going and accessing whatever tools, which are functions that are exposed to communicate with whatever third-party service that I want. And so you were seeing a wave of MCPs being deployed for you name the tool. And usually you are going to need an API key. In my case, for this GitHub one, I have a fine-grained personal access token with like specific controls, but if your token that you're using for Jira allows you to create boards, then you would be able to create boards directly through this. So yeah, kind of just, you'll have to manage the access there. So we were looking at the GitHub examples, and in here you're going to see some links. I'll make sure this presentation is available at the end. But what I want you to look at is like Smithery. Smithery here is really good for actually giving you the code output, right? So if I were to go in here and I were to look for GitHub, and let's just grab just one of these. Let's go grab GitHub. I would like add my token in here. We're just going to put some fake stuff. And now I can see like the JSON output that I would need to put into like Cursor. And what's really good is I can see the tools on the left of what functions are exposed in this MCP server. And even more importantly, if I have my token in there, I could actually run it and test it, because what I've learned in Cursor when you're dealing with these MCP servers, because you're opening up connections, you tend to have to close Cursor and like start it up again to make sure that like everything's been applied. VS Code is. So, like I said, this is the JSON for this, and I'll show you where we actually connect that in Cursor. So inside of our Cursor settings here, we're going to go to MCP, and everything related to Cursor is going to live in a hidden directory, .cursor, right? So you will see up here we have like those roles that we defined, as well as we have this MCP JSON. You can see that I have an open connection to GitHub, as well as I have like another like test MCP server for Todoist, but we're gonna go ahead and edit this. And yeah, my token's a little cut off. You should know better. You should put this in an environment variable, run this with like a script, but just for the simplicity for you to see, like, this is all it took. This is all it took was generating a personal access token, dropping it in here, and like this is the command it's gonna run in the terminal. MCP runs on two things, standard input output and server sent events. So if you have this MCP deployed out, you can be using server sent events for communication, but locally it's basically standard input output. And that's why like this is being ran as a command here. Questions on this before I kind of show you some more stuff?
Change it because it's on video.
It's cut off. If you guys want to take it, go ahead. Yeah. You're gonna have to yell, by the way. This thing's loud.
Back here. So about this, what's it called, MPC? If I want, so I tried to pull in a Figma file as a resource, as a context file into Cursor, but it won't be able to read that file because it doesn't know how to. I'm assuming the MCP will allow it to do that. Is that something that I will have to set up for Figma, some kind of plugin or some kind of server for it to read that file, or does Figma give that to us and they have to build that for us?
Yes. Okay. So now we're getting into like MCP creation. Setting up an MCP server is actually really simple. And where's my presentation? Here we go. In the docs, right, you'll actually see how to set it up. And let's say at our company, right, we don't want everyone to have access to everything you can do with a GitHub token. We don't trust that the developer is going to set up the fine-grained personal access token correctly. We can start to maybe, in that case, create a like a 1Password account with like a predefined user that has like things locked down. But we can also set up an MCP server with very specific tools, right? That you could only read from GitHub, right? And you can't write. And so in your case of Figma, you are gonna generate a token for that, right? And then you are gonna really code whatever functions and tools you want, but there's actually already a Figma MCP available that you could use, right? You're just using whatever they exposed, right? And you can set one up for your own purposes. And I do think because it's so easy, you should do that to control what people can and cannot do, because trust me, like with a MCP setup, like what we've done is all of this stuff is at the repo level, right? And so if we look at Cursor settings, I can set up a global MCP server connection, and that's just running on this computer. But these are specific to the repo. And why that's important is all I have to do for the team is if I made this a script that used an environment variable, now all they have to do is store that environment variable, and they have access to a bunch of MCP servers, right? And that's what I think is like so cool, is now I can just set the team up like ready to start to interact with stuff, and I can like really like abstract all of that complexity away for them. So yeah, like in the case of Figma, you're right, it can't read the Figma and like load it. Now you can go around and use like the Brave MCP that can like view browsers and stuff, but what's the point when you can build an MCP just for Figma? Yeah. So yeah, lots of cool stuff with Model Context Protocol, but this is really just like the beginning. And as you're exploring, I would also check out Pulse MCP. Always trying to use the right tool for what you want. Why I like them, one, there's so many different MCPs out there. There's different services to deploy them. But I like to search MCPs on here. And the reason why is when I am searching MCP servers, I can use ones from Anthropic, who are the creators of MCP as an open source project. So I can look at ones that they recommend. I can look at ones from the official provider. So Stripe, the team at Stripe actually made their own MCP, right? Or you can use community ones that like people like us would deploy just for our own purposes, right? Where is it? Figma?
You just moved it.
I just moved it. Oh, Figma context. Yeah. So yeah, Figma. Like there you go. Honestly, that's a really fun one to play with. There's some that are gonna connect to your database, to AWS, to Docker, like you name it. But just be careful, and because it's so easy, you might as well just build one for your own team's purposes to ensure that they can only do certain things. Okay. Let me just talk trends real quick, just to give you some context. The last time I ran some metrics on the team, what we saw was the teams who were adopting this stuff were more efficient. The time savings is what I want you to look at. What we saw, and this is the median, right? So there were people who were way more productive and teams who were way more productive, but what we saw was at a 25% increase in velocity, that accounted to an extra work week per month at the per developer, extra work week per month per engineer, right? That is massive.
So and you're paying them 25% more now?
25%.
No.
They gotta pay for person.
No. But yeah, like that's huge, right? And think of it, this could be you, honestly, I don't know, getting off work a little early, right? You enjoying things, or you exploring things, you building new things that you think are cool, right? But this is really just what we're seeing and what we can measure, mostly quantitatively through Git metrics, but also like qualitatively, like the developer experience is actually pretty enjoyable. Adoption. So 3 out of 5 engineers like fully adopted it immediately. But what we're seeing overall, and not just at the company, but in the marketplace, is it's become non-negotiable. When you interview for a company, like if you've ever taken a coding interview and you used a tool like CoderPad, they actually have AI integrated. You can actually use an AI agent in CoderPad to complete your task. Why? Because it's expected for you to know this. And so what I want you to think about in the takeaway is engineers need to be enabled, and we need to reduce the knowledge gap. We need to get them using this, and if you're not, I suggest paying for it for yourself, or really talking to your company and saying like, we want this, right? Because what I'm seeing right now is if I can take any engineer and increase their productivity, we can do more, right? We can add more value to customers. We can increase quality. Really, like taking just any engineer and making them much better is huge. And so what you already have, you can do more with, right? And that's that like mindset we want you to think about. It's not about like reducing your staff. It's literally about you can actually do more, and everyone per per engineer, your revenue can increase, right? And so yeah, like you should be. I'm expecting every engineer to be using this because, like I said, I want to make you a little bit better, not particularly replace you, right? Just make you better. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was had a new grad, and actually had to tell the new grad stop using AI. Why? Because he wasn't learning, right? And that was like the thing that was like so eye-opening is like libraries, it's an abstraction. And this has abstracted a lot of things away. And so those who are experienced, you are the ones who are most equipped to get the most gains from AI.
Actually, I'm curious about that. So when you're mentoring, so I find that a lot of docs are horribly written. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just have AI rephrase the doc for me, and I have a much better time learning a new stack, a new library, what have you. When you're mentoring, how do you tread that line where you say, I want you to learn, you got to read, but use AI where it makes, improves that process, whether
Yeah.
it's asking, tell AI, give me an example of the usage, but I don't want to see that taken verbatim everywhere all over the code base now, or have the AI rephrase something for you because that's a bad doc, but you still got to read it.
So if you, with experience, you will be able to know whether or not something is efficient, right? With experience, you can know whether or not, like I said, like I like some verbose code, right? Like I like my ternary operators on individual lines, right? Things like that. I know with my experience the business logic, right? I know how the things are starting to connect. So a new engineer, a new grad, what I want them to know and pay attention to is the why. Why are you doing this, right? And so I have a lot of engineers that report to me, and every now and then in a one-on-one, I'm like, hey, let's just review some code. Like, I haven't checked out your code, right? Like, there's lots of people that do this, but let's check out your code. And when I'm going through it, I'm looking for hot spots. I'm looking for the things where if there was a bug, where would the bug be, right? And when I ask questions about this code, like, oh, why did you do this? And when the response is, I don't know, the AI did it, that's the problem, right? That's the problem, is they're not actually reviewing the code. They're not going through and like interpreting it. And worst of all is when I see an engineer who's approved it, they are just as responsible, right? So I'm now having a question of like, did you see this? And they're like, what is it? I'm like, you approved it. Like, they're like, oh yeah, rubber stamp, right? And so I think when you're mentoring, like, you have to be hands-on. You have to, again, ask really good questions because you want them to understand it. You can tell a little kid, 4 times 4 is 16, right? And they will know that. They know that 4 times 4 is 16, but they don't understand that it's 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, right? Like, that is totally different. And that's what you want your like newer engineers to understand, is like the why behind it, why you're doing things. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Yeah.
So to kind of play off of that, as an engineering manager, have you considered new grads don't get the privilege of AI in their day-to-day work until they reach a certain level of proficiency? Or have you used it as something you take away when they've proved that they don't have the proficiency they claim to have?
Yeah.
And how would you address that from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, so one, like, the onboarding has changed, right? We have like very clear 30, 60, 90, and depending on the team, we're expecting, before AI, we're expecting engineers to make meaningful contributions within the first week, right? You got to learn how to build the system, et cetera. And like, there's a lot of work in this, right? We have to make sure we have small bug tickets for you to fix and some like small things so you can get the wins and like really feel a part of like the team and the organization. And so I really don't know what 6 months down the line is going to look like for a new grad. I would say it depends on what experience they had, because new grads, they're taught principles, right? And they're probably going to learn something like Java. But if they're coming in and you're on a Python project or PHP or TypeScript, right, it's now syntactical. So what I would ask them to do is start to prompt the AI and ask for insights and like, how would I do this if I know this, right? Or, hey, I know this concept, I know how to build an API in Python. I wanted to do this, I wanted to post requests, right? But this is Java. So like, how do I do this for Java, right? Because yeah, like they have very general knowledge. And even with the engineers today, with all the depth of experience, I want them to become product engineers. I want them to be really in tune with the product, the business logic, the why. I want them to be looking at the roadmap and making decisions today that are going to enable us to move faster tomorrow, right? And so I don't care too much about the nitty gritty. I care about the nitty gritty when we're querying a lot of data, right? Like that's what I care about. But a lot of this other stuff, like it's not that important. But you do have to just balance it. Yeah. I think there's a question back. No? Okay. All right. We're like, yeah.
So if more junior engineers are more prolific, they're shipping code faster, and you've noticed a pattern where they don't always actually read the code, potentially, it feels like the onus of day-to-day development kind of shifts up, where the reviewer has to be a lot more engaged.
Yes.
How have you seen like the more senior roles shifting in the new paradigm?
Okay. So this here, why this is important is because I mentioned it's qualitative and quantitative. I do not believe that just GitHub metrics, right? PR velocity, time to merge, open rate, the amount of comments in a pull request. I don't believe that is the only way to measure an engineer. The more senior engineers are gonna spend more time in requirements review. They're gonna spend more time reviewing other engineers, right? And so, yeah, as an engineering leader and manager, like at my level, it's very hard to know how to spend my time, right? I need to be in tune with the team, other cross-functional teams. I need to be in tune with the business, and I also need to be in tune with the technical stuff, right? And so, like, an engineer could be slowed down simply by having designs change, whether it be technical designs or UI designs. They could be slowed down because requirements weren't clear and the edge cases weren't there. They could be slowed down simply because there's a lot of context switching from customer requests, right? And so I think a good engineering leader is really paying attention to all of those things and trying to identify where are the bottlenecks, how can I be proactive with the team, and am I getting the right information from the engineer to know that they're blocked, right? And so when I look at Git metrics and I see someone made 30 pull requests in a month, that's a pull request per day. Believe it or not, I think that's very high. Very high for the level of complexity we have for enterprise applications. If I see that, it's not a, oh my God, you're amazing. It's, what are they doing? Like, what is she doing that is allowing for this? How do I replicate that with other engineers? And I'm gonna go look at the type of code she's making, right? Like are these small commits? Are the descriptions of the PR super easy? Is she proactive with the team and saying, hey, there's gonna be a PR coming, this is what it's gonna do, so they can anticipate it, right? Like, what is she doing that's gonna make that happen? On the flip side, if I see 5 PRs in a month, again, it's not you're bad, it's, hey, what's going on? This is not like what I've seen before, so I want to make sure that there's something else going on there, right? Because you usually make 15 PRs, right? So it's just like really like being in tune and understanding what's going on with them.
Yeah, just like it feels like the developers are producing code faster, so the bottleneck or the onus becomes on the reviewer.
Yeah, it always has been on the reviewer. Like in my opinion, it should have always been on the reviewer. Like if you approve it and there's a sev, like you're there. Like what's going on, right? Like, and that's why like we don't want rubber stamps.
Just talking volume.
Volume?
Yeah, just like more code
Yeah.
developers, or just from AI.
Yeah.
But like the same number of reviewers. So now the balance is kind of tipped, where like the reviewer
Yeah.
has to review more code.
That's why again, like I'm like really big on like GitHub metrics and like I will say, depending on a code base, how many how many files in a PR, right? Because what we've recognized is when you have many files, right? The file count is high. The bugs that come from that are higher, as well as it slows down the review cycle, right? So we're trying to find the balance of how big a PR should be, and it doesn't mean it's blocked. It just means it's going to need extra review, right? Or we're just going to say break it down, right? So like I think like your culture can manage that, but yeah, if you don't manage it, then you're right. You're going to see massive PRs with lots of code. You're going to see a bunch of Jira tickets all in this one pull request as opposed to small discrete things. What we saw is we could start to do a lot of discrete actions, right? So yeah, I just think it's like part culture too. All right, we don't have time for, we don't have time to talk about multi-agents, but there is some stuff in here. What I do want to make sure is you guys get this presentation. Yeah, like you can kind of follow the links in this presentation, but I do want to say thank you to Joshua. I appreciate being here and being able to share what I can. And of course, thank you to the corporate co-working. But in here, just like I said, scan that. You will give me your email. That way you can get this, but I'll also send the video when Ryan has this posted on YouTube. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I know we covered a lot of stuff at different levels of depth, but yeah, hope you enjoyed it.
All right, everybody close their eyes. Oh, it wasn't that bright. Oh, there it is. Okay. Wow, thank you so much, Justin. That was awesome, dude. You rock. Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? I feel like people are kind of sitting on some questions here.
I've got another one.
Yeah?
So I'm a solution architect, so I don't spend as much time developing new code, but I do spend a significant amount of time looking at legacy code and planning out refactors to bring it up to modern standards. And one thing I've struggled with was getting a solid way to get AI to help me apply design patterns to an entire code base. Okay. Have you tried it with Cursor and the larger context that it now has? Like it previously it didn't have the whole workspace context. Mm-hmm. Have you tried any of that?
Yes. So one, like it can do a lot more than you're expecting, but even if you were doing a major refactor, right, I would ask the team to break it down into like smaller bits, and that will enable us to migrate and refactor parts of it, right?
It's literally my job to come up with a plan of the overall refactor.
But see, that's the thing that's like really interesting is I want more engineers thinking at that level than like the execution of that, right? So like depending on how you break it down and how you plan it, you can really just manage how you want to execute against that. And like I said, you just break the problem down smaller, and then you can iteratively do that. And you can tell it to iteratively do that, and make these changes and use like feature branches to like segment your code better. So yeah, it's kind of like, again, like the workflow about it.
Give it 12 months and you'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
I'm almost on the opposite side where I'm a team of one working on a blue sky project, and I find the AI, so I'm half hacking, like looking for ideas, like oftentimes working with a stack that I'm not super familiar with, and I find that I don't want the AI to get sidetracked by all the wrong roads I've taken. So I'm restarting the context a lot, which just gets sort of annoying, because really what I need it to be is sort of a partner, just someone to bounce the ideas off of, and like, I'm trying to do my best to like break the task down really small.
Yes.
And I know that helps a lot, but oftentimes these are things where I would otherwise be saying, hey, I have an idea, I jump on then like Reddit or forums and say, has anyone done this before? Because I'm not finding a lot of examples. So like, is there a good way in general to get AI to be an architect level partner with you?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know exactly what you're trying to do, but if I were trying to do that myself, and if I'm proficient in Python, what I'm going to say is I'm proficient in Python, and I'm trying to do this thing, right? Really describe what it is, like, and that's why I think pseudocoding is really, really coming back, right? If you've ever been in like a whiteboard environment where you're like really just writing the code, like what do I want this thing to do? That is going to be your best friend, right? Because you could actually just pseudocode what you want this thing to do and how you want it to go about it, and then with a little context of just like what I'm trying to do and my pseudocode, I'm going to get pretty good results, right? So yeah, I would just kind of go about it that way, where you set the stage of like, hey, I'm experiencing this, I'm trying to do this thing, here's my plan, right? And then ask it, how would you go about this? And explain it in this technology, right? And you're going to get something really, really great from that.
If you do end up doing that, that would make a great talk, by the way. And architecting is one of those things where there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat, sort of thing, right? So to his point, maybe feeding it a little bit of your mind of where you want that refactor or your design pattern to go, maybe we'll take it down that rather than just leaving it as an open-ended, for it to paint whatever it feels like that day, or worse yet, hallucinate. You said you had one? Yeah.
As of right now, do you know if there's any ways to interact with Cursor agentic mode programmatically? The use case that I had, I was trying to do a task that's like very repetitive, and it's like running on multiple files, and I find that like I had to just walk it through like the prompt like over and over again. Okay, do it with this file, do it with this file, do it with this file. Yeah. Where I really like was wishing I had some way to just like I have this whole prompt, do on this file, then do on this one, and just like program that out.
So we're just, honestly, we could be here all night, but I want you to look at this slide, because what you're describing is a perfect use case for a crew, right? Literally create a crew of agents that are very specific and have clear roles and responsibilities and clear expectations. And then you can even have a manager agent that's like doing those things, so it can start to pass really like tasks back and delegate. So yeah, I would actually go in this route to deliver on what you want to do. Like I said, we could be here all night.
Yeah, well, I've never made a multi-agent, but when I do, I'm just going to call it Agent Smith because it's from the Matrix, and that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much, Justin. Just a couple of things. One, we do have JetBrains licenses to give away 1 year free for IntelliJ or whichever. So is anyone interested in that? Okay, we've got a couple. I'll tell you what, I'll leave my cards in the back. You can just email me, and I've got like 3 or 4 licenses because the last one we didn't, nobody claimed it. So cool. And then just a couple of things. Thank you again, Justin, for speaking. Already a couple of people I talked in the back that are like, this is an outstanding talk. And what better yet, the slides too, because there's a lot. This month, it's not 100% confirmed, but we might have a Python talk about computer vision. I'm still waiting for the guy that works at Meta to get back to me. He like soft confirmed, but I got to just double check. So that might be coming down next month. If not, we'll figure something out. If you do have a talk that you would like to give, what I'm thinking about doing, not next month in May, but June, is maybe do like 2 or 3 lightning talks. A lot of people here have said like, hey, I'd like to talk about this, but it only can fill like 15, 20 minutes. Perfect time that we can kind of just have like 2 or 3 talks. Well, you know, and then we'll start clapping. And go from there.
This one's good.
Did it die? Oh. And also thanks to Corporate Co-working. Thank you very much for them lending us this space. They charge us a whopping $0, and that's awesome of them. Tony, who runs the place, is super cool. If you ever want a day pass to come check this place out, feel free to reach out to him on corporatecoworking.com. I've worked here many a time, and it's absolutely fantastic. Fast internet. Just don't try to leave when a football game is happening. That'd be my only recommendation. All right, did I miss anything? Okay, we can hang out here for a little bit, and then usually we head over to like, you know, PTs or something if anybody wants to come out with us, and if everyone's invited. So yeah, thank you everyone.